Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our VIP Roundtable discussion this afternoon, and I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe. On behalf of the entire Florida Press team, let me say how excited we are to provide our FPA members this opportunity to share ideas and truly support each other during this ever-changing and challenging time in history. We're all in this fight and definitely stronger together. Before we begin, I would like to recognize our sponsors, Blue Toad, Preferred Marketing Solution, and our very own Intersect Media. Now a big thank you to our VIP panel. And with us this afternoon, we have Erica Cooper, VP of Advertising, Orlando Sentinel, Shauna Devlin, VP of Sales, USA Today Network, Bruce Fallman, VP of Sales and Marketing, Tampa Bay Times, Omar Zucco, Regional Advertising Director, Suncoast Media Group, and Patrick Fuentes, General Sales Manager, the Palm Beach Post, and he's also president of FNAME. That's a mouthful. And now on to our VIP roundtable discussion. Each panelist will be asked to share their thoughts on a few questions. And once we hear from all of our panelists, we will move on to the next question. If you have a specific question during the discussion, please add it to the chat feature, and I will try to get to all of them. And to get to the chat feature, you'll hover your mouse over the screen and you'll see a chat bubble appear, and just feel free to type in a question. Also, small reminder, we will be recording the session as well. So without further ado, I'm gonna dive into our first question. During the past few months, and they've been challenging, as we all know, can you share a few ad revenue success stories related to programs that you've put in place to keep or win new business? And I'm gonna pass the baton over to Erica Cooper. Erica, take it away.
Well, thanks, Jim. I think really early on, we heard the word unprecedented over and over and over again, to the point that we almost didn't want to hear it anymore, right? But it is unprecedented, perhaps. But we also had a lot of history, I think, to guide us from when we've had economic downturns before. And so we also know that the same was true of listening to advertisers. And I think at first, we might have lost a little bit of sight in the panic of that, of hearing and being guided by some of the things that they said to us and they were telling us. And so, very quickly, we realized that they were going to be the biggest guide to how we could find successes through this time, by understanding how they were adapting, looking at what their new struggles were, hearing it loudly and clearly, coming up with the programs and the ideas that would really help to navigate and assist them through this difficult time. And so quickly we realized that obviously folks were not leaving their homes. We needed to be able to help them in a digital realm. And those that were leaving their homes and were going out to be certain things, i.e. maybe to get food or to be able to buy certain purchases for their homes, were doing it in different ways than they would have before. And so our successes, I think, really starting off, before I share some of them, we listened, we adapted, and we really collaborated a lot with the newsroom in some of the things that we did. And so unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. And some of those things started off very quickly with who's open, when are they open, how do we communicate with them, what does that look like? And so we work with our newsroom very quickly early on to get up a guide and really a listing of who's open, what restaurants are open, what are their hours, how do you be able to purchase and buy from them? And then sponsorships were created against those kinds of programs for advertisers that wanted to let you know. For example, Hungry Howie's, we were able to get a new buy from them, never an advertiser for us before, because they sponsored that listing. So very quickly, that was an example of something that it was of benefit to our readers, and it was also of benefit to us and to our advertisers to be able to sponsor that and say, okay, I want to go to a restaurant. You know what? I'm going to go to Hungry Howie's and I'm going to order a pizza. And so what we also did to learn more about what they needed was to listen and run some promotional campaigns. We said, we will help you with your creative. We came up with templated creatives that focused on safety and value, because that's what we heard and what our marketing was telling us and what our advertisers and consumers were saying they wanted their advertising and messaging to be about. So when our advertisers were struggling with what do we need to say if we are still open, it's that we need to focus on safety, and we needed to focus on the value and the deals that people could get with the economy tightening as much as it was. And so restaurants, retailers, those that were still open, they partnered with us because we came up with promotional campaigns that helped them in a time and added additional value. We also focused on programs that allowed them, quite frankly, to buy now and pay later. So value up front, and then later in Q3 and 4, letting them be able to pay for some of the things that happened. We learned quickly that the media that was doing that, and the television stations that were doing that, the radio stations that were doing that, they were getting those dollars and that money. We then also ran seminars. We connected with our audiences. We educated them as well as ourselves with the questions that we were getting and the hearing. We partnered with local ad agencies and local leaders, and we communicated. We had over 50 people sign up, 50 advertisers for every single session that we did. And by the last session, we had over 70. Those particular seminars gave us the opportunity to reach back. And of the 50 that attended, we converted over 20 new advertisers into business for us and also helpfulness for them, and did an audit for anyone that attended and are still looking at additional prospects. Now, to get specific with the successes that we had, we looked at both old school and new world successes. We were able to go to schools that were not being able to celebrate their seniors graduating and come up with just a simple campaign that allowed $45,000 of business for us, coming from Orange County Public School System, from local colleges, from local universities, from others throughout the community, private schools as well, that ran a program in conjunction with editorial, promoted again the collaboration between us, those valedictorians and those that were doing well in the community. And so that's something that brought us revenue that mostly we never see. But that was old school, running print ads in the newspaper. New world, we came up with a program called the Heroes Program, because folks did not only want to focus on the anxiety that COVID was causing. How can we recognize the heroes, the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, the community, really heroes? And so we were able to go to businesses such as roofers, and actually that's who we got as a sponsor, and also a plumbing company that said, you know what, we're willing to sponsor that for $15,000 a month. And so those are some of the successes that we have. We also had a Facebook Live chat and sponsorship program that I'll get into more if I have time later, that we did with Advent Health, because they were doing Facebook Live chats and we helped to extend that message. We listened to what they needed, what consumers wanted. We also have a new news that we'd never seen a sponsor for before. Editorial began doing that, and we were able to find a sponsorship for that in the amount of $10,000 a month as well. So a lot of new programs and advertisers that we were able to benefit by listening to what they had. And I'd be remiss to say that we also didn't hear from the medical community and the financial community and find out ways to leverage and be able to run additional advertising for them. So.
Wow. Great ideas. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Any questions for Erica? I'll look in the chat. I don't see any. So we could move right along to Shauna, but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, everyone. We did a lot of similar things to what Erica's team did, so I won't go back over some of that space, but it sounds like you did a very good job converting opportunity in the market, and your team should be very proud of how you served that marketplace. I know it's been a difficult stretch of weeks for all of our teams, and I also think that from that difficulty, we've had an opportunity like maybe no other time, maybe even unprecedented, to live out our mission. And for us, that's really to help businesses thrive. And so through all of our trainings and how we've thought about refining our own go-to-market strategy through this, we've really wanted to make sure that all of those elements had that at the heart of it. So we really started there, first with how do we really help a lot of these really small and medium-sized businesses survive. And so we created a database We did it across the network, called Support Local, that was all about allowing the public to engage and buy gift cards so that we could help drive cash flow for these companies. And that's good for our community, that's good for those businesses, and ultimately that's good for us in the long term because it's helping the economic engine of the communities that we serve. And from that data, we were able to gather information on what businesses were open organically, because we were pushing out promotion to that website that we were sponsoring. And we were also encouraging companies to go in and put that information in. So we were able to see like what businesses were open, what businesses had delivery, and then we could build these, very highly targeted recommendations for micro campaigns, because to the point that was brought up, consumers were engaging, but they were engaging differently. And so we need to be the idea people in those situations to help these businesses survive through this period. So how do we get even more finite with our targeting? How do we help them, with their cash flow as their business model was changing? And how did we train up our team to really have those conversations? Because carrying them were different than what we're used to saying. I mean, we had our whole kind of bank of business, our whole foundation of our business all at one time, going through these massive business model changes. And so normally we're talking about a category of business and maybe small pivots on the consumer side, but we have these large pivots on the consumer side of how people were engaging, and then businesses really in crisis, and our people were trying to navigate through all of that. So we needed to really dig into that, evaluate needs at a deeper level, and make sure that they were able to carry that conversation. And from that, much like Erica said, a lot of really robust programs came out. So one of them was helping our clients understand how to do exactly what we're doing now. So, if we look at our financial sector in the middle of high season, when a lot of those folks are used to having financial seminars face-to-face, they weren't able to do that. And at the same time, the stock market was having turbulence. And so it's just a really perfect storm within that very important sector of business for us. And that's not a sector of business that for us locally has been overly reliant on using technology. And so we became these experts in how these platforms are used and how they might market those seminars. And what we found is that, we're a very seasonal market, and the output from that wasn't only that we could drive attendance into virtual seminars for financial planners, but they also realized that while we physically are a very seasonal market, that they could pull attendance from their feeder markets. And so they could stabilize out the number of people that they were reaching by using these technology tools. And so that was a light bulb moment for them that was born of this crisis moment, but I think is going to continue, right? So we've all pushed into use of technology at a higher rate, and some of that's going to stay, right? Whether it's telemedicine, we saw the same thing happen there. And so how do we take these user changes that occurred and think about the promotional campaigns that go along with them, and continue that on to our new normal, because consumers are going to have more options with how they engage with brands now that they're more comfortable with the various levels of technology that we have. We also thought about partnerships between nonprofits and businesses. And so our nonprofit community in Southwest Florida is very robust, and this was a very painful time for them as well. A lot of events that they used for fundraising models were canceled, and then several businesses who pulled back their advertising because they were shut down. So especially in like elective medical, they would be advertising, but they didn't because they couldn't, fulfill on their mission. And so we really thought about hooking them up with nonprofits to keep their brand in the market, and then helped that nonprofit raise money for things like food collection. And so just thinking about those, that kind of community conduit mission that we can play, I think was important. It served that greater need to the larger community. It also helped that brand show that it wasn't just about business to consumer messaging. It really was about business to community messaging. They couldn't handle and take on new patients, but they could show that they were a good citizen and they were a good neighbor. And it also shored up the finances of the nonprofits that really support our greater community. And then kind of the last example before I move on to kind of our capstone, which was the Rebuilding America project, was we looked at our Google Trend data to see how those consumer behaviors were changing and really tried to be in front of that with our clients. And so probably the largest example of that is as we saw searches fall off for people engaging around open houses, we saw searches increase for people wanting to see assets that were virtual tours. And obviously virtual tours, that technology has existed, but there just really hasn't been a lot of consumption there. So there was this big scramble on the parts of brokers and agents to get all of those assets up on their website, but just having those assets up on your website and checking that box is not enough, right? So we then were building the tactics and campaigns for how are we going to drive the qualified traffic that we know is in the market that's creating this pent-up demand over to those virtual tours. And I think that's another example of something that's going to stay on the other side of this crisis point that we're in. And then kind of born from where I started with the support local and the partnership between advertising and news, we wanted to have a reflection point on where we've all been from this last 100 days and really think about that in categories that really move our markets, and also give the opportunity for those categories to reflect on where they think that they're going to be going. And so the newsroom took that on as a very large project, and it also created an environment for our local brands to tell their story about how they're reopening and fulfill on kind of that PR mission of building confidence, right? So as we reopen the state, we know that one of the big goals that brands should have is they're making adjustments to how they're running their business, and how are we going to partner with them to share that messaging out to the public so that ultimately the public feels confident going into their restaurants, going into their places of business, so that we can get the economies in our respective markets back on track.
Well, hey, Shauna, thank you for sharing. And I love, what you said about the community connection and the community being a community connector dovetailed exactly to what Erica was saying too. I'm sure we're going to hear the same from the rest of the panelists, but it's so important, especially during this time. We do have a couple of questions in the chat that I'd love to get answered. So I'm going to throw the ball back to Erica real quick. Someone's asking about the danger between, pay now, pay later, that type of approach. Mm-hmm. Erica, what do you say to that?
Well, I think that it was a risk that we have to take to some degree. There are, and it's a calculated risk, right? We don't necessarily do it across the top for every advertiser, but when we have certain businesses that we know need our help to survive, those are calculated risks that I believe we have to make if we're truly partners. And so, we looked at that. We didn't just say anybody that has a business we would look at doing that with, but if we have long-term and long-standing advertisers that we believe are able to come out the other side with our help and with our support, then yes, we made those calculated risks and calculated decisions, and not without talking to our finance department first.
Yeah. And then one more quick question. Would you say that most advertisers during that time, would you consider them traditional or non-traditional?
That's a good question. A mix, I would say. So, and I would imagine that this was the same across the board. Financial and medical, we heard across Tribune, so this wasn't just Orlando or South Florida, were definitely some of the categories that stepped up, that were running more. They had a reason to run advertising during this time. So those are obviously traditional categories. But categories, for example, and we would never have gone to high schools. It wouldn't have even occurred to us to call a high school to ask them to run more than just a simple graduation ad. And yet we netted $45,000 out of that category. We've gone after like from a retail perspective, like an RV company that we've gotten additional advertising from that we might not otherwise have. But so, and I think we're all dipping our toes back into getting money even from some smaller advertisers like restaurants that we might not have. But definitely some non-traditional, because we have to get creative and innovative. And I think that we'll see a shift, a true paradigm shift, that we're going to lose some, but we'll gain new businesses that we might not have otherwise. So.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Shauna, thank you. And Erica, thank you. I'm going to move over to Bruce. Take it away.
You know, I'll start with how we just ended in that question, because it really helps understand how we approach the situation. I mean, clearly, as the dollars were falling, we all know that we started to get the cancellations on March 13th, and then they continued to build. And that obviously we wanted to do what we could to mitigate that. But what we realized was very quickly that this is a disaster for everyone. And we were more focused on how our customers, whether they're current or future, view us when this is over, as based on how we acted while it was going on. And I think that's where Erica comes from, with giving people some more time to pay and so on. I really felt like the driver was about what can we do now, so when this is over, our best partners look at us and say, man, they were in it with me at the worst time. Right? So that really drove our business recovery strategies, with customers that were still open but had business off as much as 90%. We would sit with them and we would say, what do you need most? What can we help you with most? And frankly, I know we're not supposed to talk about rate, but if it was a ridiculously lower rate than what they were even typically used to be paying, if it made sense, I'd run the cost analysis, we would do it. We did this custom, I mean, with customer by customer. It wasn't a one size fits all. It was custom programs, whatever they felt made sense for them, what we would look at hard. And in most cases we did. Yes, we did have the small business programs where we incentivized more frequency and larger ads, way more than they could have afforded under typical times. And we did have some success there. But to my point about trying to help in whatever way, they were like, we just need help communicating. So I had the opportunity, as we shifted, many of you are aware, we went from 7 days in print to 2, Wednesday and Sunday, and then drove our audience on the other days of the week to our e-newspaper. So we immediately overnight had 50,000 people a day reading our e-newspaper. Well, clearly I have a different business equation to try to pay for that. So we started a feature. It's called Take Note. It looks like a bulletin, a cork bulletin board with little Post-it notes all over it with a red pin in it, different colors. And anyone in the community can participate in it. They get 150 characters. I even held back one of the reps that would have been furloughed because most of her territory was devastated, and she proactively called all over the marketplace to seed it. And now it runs 3 pages every Friday in the e-newspaper, and we're getting rave reviews from people. I mean, again, it was a give back, and frankly, it's a great lead list. It's a great lead list too. Yeah. So as well, I had the opportunity to reinvent our display rate card based on an e-newspaper, and we've had a lot of success there. And we've done a lot of the things that has already been mentioned. I'll mention one more that has, and again, this was just the spirit of goodwill. You know, with obits and funeral services and other gatherings, you know, thank goodness we did not have a death rate like in the Northeast as a result of COVID. So we actually started to see obit volumes decline because people are like, oh, I don't need to place the obit now just to, anyway, so what we did there is we said, we'll place the obituary now, and then at the time of the service, we'll give you 7 lines free and 50% off of each line when you are ready to announce the gathering and so on. So I just, the overall driving strategy here was to try to give back. To that point too, we did have a lot of success with digital services, webinars. Just, you know, our customers, they have the time now in some case to sit and watch. We're all used to digitally doing what we're doing right now with Zoom. And we've had over a couple of hundred people that have attended, which by the way, have led to about 22 solid leads and nice dollars. And these webinars, really, it was way more about good coaching ideas on how to deal with a crisis and how to how to recover from this mess. And then, hey, if we can help with that, we're here. So we've been, I guess, would you describe it as a very passive approach to we're here and we're going to be here. So let's all get through it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Bruce. Omar, you're up.
Oh, excellent. Hello, everybody. I think a lot of the panelists are sharing the same stories or kind of the same thought process or the same ideology of looking at the community as being what we're doing this for. Here at Southwest Florida, we took an approach and something that Erica said early on resonated, which was history guided us. And when all of this started to happen and we knew that this was going to get rough, and we've had a couple of rough months, we all have, but when this started, we looked at what have we done in the past when tragedy has hit us. And one of the things that the Suncoast Media Group did after Hurricane Charlie, our publisher mentioned it to us and said, well, we did vouchers for those businesses that were completely devastated and had to close and then had to eventually reopen. When they were ready to reopen, then they could utilize those vouchers so they could be able to use them as advertising dollars to get their business back up again. So a similar story from our group president, Mike Beatty, who was in Joplin when the tornado hit. So that history kind of gave us some indication as to what we needed to do to move forward and to get through this together. And the overall goal was, how do we help the community? How do we let them know we're here truly to help you and make sure that your pain is not as tough as it could potentially be? So we got together as a group and we put together a stimulus package or a stimulus program, whether it is, we call it a stimulus or something else. But what we did is we put together a number of programs that included free advertising, as long as it promoted that they were open or that they were ready for curbside pickup or doing their sharing their hours, etc. So we put together those kind of packages just for the community. Digital listings as well, directory listings at no cost to them. We also put, as part of that program, we put packages that included a match program, whether it is in our owned and operated as well as in our print products. Now, we promoted this by going to all local chambers and putting a press release out there, sharing it with all the other associations, whether it's realtor associations, etc. So the total amount of this grant or stimulus program that we're putting together was $2.5 million. So it was going to be more of a match program, but it included a lot of free ads as well. There were mostly 3x2s, gang pages or JP pages, whatever we want to call them. And it was just, again, letting the community know and the business community know that we were partners in their pain and that we are here to help. For us, we were looking at it from the business side. We want to make sure that once those businesses are back on stage 3, if we want to call it that, in Florida, that they remember us. And for us, it was more of a lead list as well. But for those businesses, they really appreciated it. We got close to 1,000 businesses participating in our number of stimulus programs. About 70% of those businesses had not advertised with us in recent years. Out of that, we probably got roughly about 20% of those businesses that have continued to advertise with us in one of those more commitment-driven packages that we put together. So we've been extremely successful in building our business from the ashes, so to speak, because that's where kind of everyone was facing that challenge. So we went on and still have some of those programs in place. It was a 5-month program. So if they signed up by a certain time, they would qualify for the stimulus. We had our reps, we had about maybe 50% of our reps working from home. We gave them that option. The other 50% still came into the office. We had them focused primarily on outbound calls. No one could go out for the most part, and a lot of businesses were not accepting meetings. So they used technology and were working from the office or home, making calls, making outbound calls. They were making, on average, 50 outbound calls a day. And then we would just regroup at the end of the day and have conversations about their successes, what's progressing, who needs help, sharing ideas, etc. And that worked out really well. So to date, we've had over 500,000 in commitments from advertisers. A lot of it that has already materialized in May and materializing in June as well. So it really helped us a lot to offset some of the challenges. Aside from that, we saw that a lot of the advertisers that we've seen some of the bigger successes were advertisers that had not advertised with us in some time. And they've committed to a year knowing that they could use some of that stimulus money until the end of September, and they've signed annual agreements with us. Healthcare has been good for us. We've had some success in automotive and automotive aftermarket. The service industry has been really good as well. And surprisingly, we've also had the home health side of the business doing well as well. We had a lot of assisted living facilities and home health aid companies advertising quite heavily with us.
That's great.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions, Omar, so I'm going to move over to Patrick. Patrick, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Hey, everybody. One of the great things about going last is I just get to put my twist on what everybody else already said. So
Right.
I'll do my best. Hey, yeah, I couldn't agree more. The two things we had in mind going into this situation with the pandemic are one, to be extremely sensitive, right? Sensitive to the public, sensitive to what's going on in the community, sensitive to our advertisers and prospects and local businesses. The other important piece was to not only coach our AEs through that, but to also provide to them the resources they need, the tools they need, the leads they need to, going back to Bruce's point, to make sure that they can reach out and have really strong, sensitive conversations around what's going on and what we might be able to do to help them, right? So those are kind of the two pillars that we worked off of when we were coming up with some ideas on how we can go to market. And I would say that from when we started back in late March to now, it's evolved pretty tremendously. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention two of the corporate things we did that Shauna already covered, but I will just touch on those briefly because I think they were extremely important. One of those being support local, right? So again, the opportunity for people in the community to support local businesses while in quarantine, right? For us to provide a platform and to be part of a company, to provide a platform where people can go out, buy gift cards ahead of time for businesses they love in their communities, especially here in Palm Beach County, I will say was huge. Made you feel really good about the company you work for, that we were able to provide something like that. And then encourage our clients and business owners to go ahead and list their business, to help them list their business on there, right? Of course, we wanted them to be there. So it gave them the opportunity to have people participate for them. So that was pretty neat. And for us in Palm Beach, being somewhat newer to the Gannett USA Today network team, it was really cool and it felt really good to have that wind at our back. Rebuilding America. Wow. This was something that's more recent and just kicked off on this past Sunday. But what a cool way to work with our content team, where we were able to watch, frankly, the content team put out some fantastic national and local content around 12 major business categories that are important to us in our market. Talk about them, talk about what's going on, talk about how they're doing business differently. And then we were able to go out and find sponsors in those categories that wanted to showcase their business and tell their story right next to that content. I mean, how cool is that, right? here we are, we're open, here's what we're doing. Oh, and by the way, we're right here adjacent to all this wonderful content that's being written about in terms of what our industry or what our business category is doing. I don't want to get ahead of myself in the panel here, but I will say that I got to say, for our sellers, the swagger that it gave them was, I mean, it just kind of brought that confidence back, gave them the swagger to go out and say, here's something cool. Here's a few things actually really cool that we're doing that hopefully will help a little bit. And if you want to be part of it, we put together some pretty cool sales packages, you know, advertising packages, print, digital, social, to help you participate fairly easily. And that, again, for our sales teams, it just induced a high level of confidence because it worked, and it worked really well, and people wanted to talk about it. So thanks for teeing that up, Sean.
Yeah.
A couple things that we did locally that I want to share with everybody that were also very good, giving back to the community. So we created a hashtag and we put it out there publicly. We promoted it in print. We promoted it online. We put it out in other sources, social media handles, all of our social media handles. And we encourage the public, specifically business owners, to use it in telling their story on what they're doing differently. Are they offering curbside service? Are they doing a parade through their zoo or reservoir in order for people to still be able to drive through or come see what they're doing without having that, that face-to-face interaction? What we did then is work with the content team for those folks that were using the hashtag and they were putting it on their social media and putting it out there. We picked day by day, we picked and we chose some businesses that were using the hashtag and telling their story to promote them and tell their stories ourselves. And we used space in the paper to do that. We used social media to do that. And I will tell you, the response was unbelievable from a standpoint of them being appreciative. I mean, we had emails to local management just saying, wow, I can't believe you guys picked this up. Can't believe you guys did this. As we come out of this thing, we want to talk more. What a great, partner here in the local community. We didn't even realize, and this is obviously new business, let's talk more, and whatever comes out of the future, we're definitely going to partner. And we felt good about that as well. So again, giving back to the community with that hashtag and just self-promoting. It also gave our sales reps the opportunity to go out and speak with these businesses that were using the hashtag, reach out to them, want to learn more about their story, and do a needs analysis as well. Last but not least, we did partner with a company that I've worked with for a long time, Pulse Research. This is a company out of Portland, Oregon. And what they've done for us in the past is run surveys, right? So run surveys to our readership in both print and online. And what it is it's a shopping survey. It's asking people, what are their buying habits going to be over the next 12 months? Well, what we did was we jumped on an opportunity, worked with this partner and said, hey, why don't we go after a certain group of business categories, put it out to our readers and start asking some questions. Let's take 2 weeks and ask some questions about, in this current moment during this pandemic, what are your needs right now in terms of shopping, and what types of businesses will you be doing business with? And I will tell you, in a week and a half, we got a significant survey amount. We had a lot of surveys done. And what it showed us was, we went out and we asked them what they would be doing over the next 3 months. We went out and we asked about 200 business categories and whether or not our readers would be shopping in those categories. And what we found, that was 51 of those 200 actually had an increase to our 12-month survey in terms of people needing to shop for their services now. So talk about giving the sales reps something to go after and say, hey, listen, in your business category, over the past 2 weeks, what we found out by asking our readers in both print and digital was that 133% increase to the need in your business category for our local market and for the people reading our products. And so that was super helpful. And it allowed us to go out to those specific business categories and say, hey, look, there's a really good opportunity here. Let's talk about that piece of the pie that we can help you get.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, great ideas. I'm going to move on to the second question, and we're running a little behind schedule. So just asking everybody just to be, just tighten it up a little bit. But since Florida's, beginning to open back up, are there specific segments of business or innovative programs related to your digital audience growth that you're putting in place to grow either existing or new business? And I'm going to pass the baton right back up to Erica.
And I'll be pretty quick. And I think some of us might have answered, I heard, into some of the further questions.
Yeah, true.
Maybe we'll be a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
I held on to this one for a minute, but In answer to your question in terms of what we're looking to do because of the traffic, obviously all of us saw traffic skyrocket during COVID. That's looking a little bit backwards, and I want to talk a little bit about how to look forward. And so one of the things that we're looking to do during that time and as we move forward is to gain sponsorships of our content. And so we've created a lot more upfronts, similar to what you see in the television realm. And radio realm. And so we've done that around the content that we have, creating packages and programs that are digitally focused for the most part, because there is so much content and we can track what that is, including sponsorships that allow folks to get that content for free and not behind a paywall. So again, in the spirit of collaboration, you've heard me talk about that before, we're now collaborating with our circulation folks to see how we can have advertisers help provide that content for them for free. Also digitally, what we've looked at doing are more virtual events. We've seen a lot of our sister properties do successful virtual events. We're looking at doing more of that in that space. Many of them have held on to all of their advertisers, and in many instances at the same dollar amount with literally 90% less on the expense side. So that's something to consider. We've looked at taking some of our printed magazines that we've done into digital forms and digital editions and ebooks. Again, taking that hard cost and that hard expense down. And maybe we don't retain all of the advertisers, but we retain a lot of them. And so it looks, again, we're having a paradigm shift in our models. I mentioned Facebook Live before. We're doing that more. We're collaborating with editorial. The Heroes program that we did, that's something that we'll continue to do as we found that. I think John Krasinski showed us all that. People want happy and positive news, and there is money behind that. So how do we do that different, and how do we create those upfronts and those sponsorships moving forward in that realm? But also, how do we reach out to those collaborators, like, for example, on the Space Coast, those are not traditional advertisers. How do you get somebody like a SpaceX to say, hey, I want to stand up and be a part of this community and a part of its future and success? If anybody's figured out how to do that, let me know, because I'm not talking to anyone. But so I think that answered that question quickly.
Yeah.
I'll move on.
Thank you, Erica. Shauna.
So I will summarize too, because I think we've talked about a couple of these things as well. But I think that a big key here is innovation of ad units and placements. And so, as we see our clients start to rely differently on digital assets, like how are we looking at our ad units to maybe pull in those assets. So a great example would be, looking at our ad units and trying to find a way to marry those up with virtual tours so that it's not, we're reducing a click, right? And so from a consumer perspective, you're able to engage with that ad unit right in that space. So those are some of the things that we're fleshing out as technology becomes something that's really driving consumer change. And then I think that, branded content, something that we've seen used in pockets of industries, but as the state reopens and we think about competitive advantages and reopening messages and changes in the competitive landscape, there's just such a deep need for brands to be telling their stories unlike maybe any other time. And so we're seeing branded content be a solution that's across, almost every category of business that we engage with. And it's such a robust offering. And so we can build that into our solutions. As far as, specific categories that seem to have a lot of traction and a lot of emerging potential in them, home improvement, we've all been kind of captivated in our homes. And if you're like me, you've looked around a lot and said, I really don't like that color. I really don't like that wall. And we are not alone in that. And so home improvement projects, we just see it in the Google Trend data. We're seeing it now show up in jobs coming into those home improvement partners. And so they represent a lot of opportunity for us. Real estate is definitely on the uptick for us, both on the resale and the development side. And then medical, as it's been opening up, and then also how do we fold in that technology play of telemedicine there as well. And then lastly, we're just looking for new ways to think about partnerships. So we've mentioned, several of you have mentioned, sessions where we are educating. We've done that as well, but how do we tap into larger associations so that we can be kind of an education arm to that association where there's already a group of people where we can speak to a vertical about what's going on with that vertical of business as it relates to a digital consumer behavior. And so, you know, that's something that's a target for us as well.
Cool. Yeah, and thank you for sharing those, you know, those categories of business, because I think you're right. I think a lot of folks, a lot of businesses are emerging, especially categories, and I'll rattle them off when we're done to see if we missed any. But I'm going to turn it over to Bruce.
I mean, obviously, our world got shifted quickly. You know, we were always kind of a digital lagger, and here we are now 5 days a week only digitally. So a lot of what I'm going to mention is under development, but nonetheless, it's a total paradigm shift of how you see the world, right? I mentioned that we are having some success in selling display ads in the e-newspaper, but when you think about that, you don't have newsprint and ink costs, you can kind of reinvent yourself in a lot of areas. We're working with WeHa, who many of you might use from a print to web perspective. And we're talking about getting back in the auto business from an inventory play. They can take a dealer's complete inventory. We can play it up in e-newspaper style flip pages and charge for per click. The Arkansas newspaper, who has been only one day in print for quite some time, has become a regular it's been a regular conversation with them of the ideas that they're having there. So again, it's just a paradigm shift. We're looking at doing real estate that way, to where I could see pages and pages now. And you think, well, you could do that on your website. There's an interesting dynamic, and I'm going to give you a proof of how this changes. We use, I'm sure you probably all use, you can get all the circulars, the preprints through the flip service, and that is sat at the bottom of our homepage for a couple of years. It gets very few click-throughs. So I took and put a full page at the back of our e-newspaper. Remember, the experience of going through a newspaper, you expose yourself to information you weren't seeking. So you get to that last page, you see a wonderful promo with all of our best customers' logos and say, go click here to look at their circular. The flipping rocket of audience is just blown off the charts because I'm proactively driving. The same thing will happen if I have automotive back there or real estate back there. It will get clicks. I'm looking at all kinds of pay per performance kind of to models there. So, you know, again, it's been interesting here. We're excited about the future. And to me, it's just a new time to look at the world. And I know you guys are all still 7-day, but I'm going to add one more. The Arkansas paper's working with Dillard's on this, and we hope to be in that same boat. So Dillard's is running display ads in their paper in which when you click on the item in their e-newspaper, it launches Dillard's e-commerce site. So just one more. There's so many cool things you can do there. And I'm just scratching the surface. And I'll end it at that.
Well, that's a cool idea. Thanks, Bruce. Omar.
Yeah, Bruce is right. There's a lot of new things that we are now kind of forcing ourselves to learn and to be able to evolve to this new reality. And for us, obviously, as everyone in this panel probably can attest, we're trying to capitalize as much as possible on our own and operated and our increased traffic and putting different products and bundles and volume deals together. But aside from that, one of the areas that we've seen some success pre-COVID has been with contests, using Second Street as a partner. We've seen significant success, and I think as we move out of COVID, we'll be looking to ramp up the amount of contests that we do. We also have been doing more virtual. And one of the things that we instituted was doing a virtual Hurricane Expo, just because the two that we do went away. So we did have a print component, but also a virtual, which allowed us to showcase videos from the advertisers and teach them how to do things differently from what they used to do. At the end of the day, for them, it was all about generating leads, and this was a good solution for them because they don't have to man a booth and they don't have to be exposed to a multitude of people coming through. So we're looking to do more of that. Virtual events is going to be big for us because this area is very social and they do a lot of different events, and whether it's from the chamber or different associations that want to partner up with us and have shown interest to partner up with us to do their events virtually, that has shown a lot of promise. Similarly, I know someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Erica that mentioned something about who would have thought reaching out to schools or high schools in particular. So we've reached out to all the high schools in the area, and we're doing kind of a virtual graduation, which has also a print component because that's what they're used to and that's what the market does. But we're focusing a lot on the virtual aspect of it and doing something for them that they can't do on their own. So those are some of the things that we're doing and we're looking to do moving forward and capitalize on.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Omar.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Some of the things, for those of you that follow Burrell, we asked the same three questions that came right out of Burrell, right? Which is, are you open? Are you COVID-19 compliant? And are you offering anything to your customers, right? Are you offering a deal? So the two things I will mention kind of pertain to those asks, right? The first thing is our native content team. We have an amazing native content team here locally, backed also corporately by a larger team. And we really leveraged being able to have folks tell their story and promote it for a 30-day stint over the past couple months in print, in digital, and of course, with all kind of social promotion through all of our social handles. So we wrote a lot of stories and articles for people, and we also took their content in as well and promoted it. So native content, branded content, definitely key for us and our clients. The other one, and this is something Omar mentioned as well, which is promotions, right? So do you have a deal and what are you offering? We saw this as a non-invasive way or a non-opportunistic way for our clients to talk to the market and give something back, right? So promote their giveaway. What are they giving away? And then, of course, build them an excellent marketing and sales lead list, going back to what Bruce said early on. An excellent way to build a lead list for our clients and show that they're giving back to the community with the giveaway.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Hey, real quick before I go on to the next question, I just wanted to share some of the categories of businesses that I heard. And if I missed anything, please jump in the chat and add to these categories. I heard real estate, service businesses, healthcare, telemedicine, obviously ties to that, financial, home improvement, healthcare. Shauna talked a little bit about nonprofits, and I love that whole partnership idea. Automotive, and someone earlier in the weekly session actually said meta spa is big right now, is a big category of business to go after. So if there's anything I missed that we've said, might want to just throw that in the chat. And then our last question, which is near and dear to everybody's heart, and that is motivating our sales team. And we'd love to hear your ideas quickly around the horn on what are we doing differently to motivate our sales team during this time. And I'm going to go right back up to Erica.
Anyone who knows me knows that this quick thing is not easy for me. So, but it's the most difficult question, and I'll try to answer it, I think, as quickly as I can. We've looked at doing new business incentives. We've created additional incentives for sponsorships and upfronts. We do weekly sales recognitions. We try to make the huddles that we have, throughout the week, the touch bases, more fun. We have Tribune cross-market calls, and we try to share throughout that and recognize successes through that as well. But we also make sure that we're recognizing the support staff and the things that we do. And sometimes if the sales rep wins, their support person gets the gift card that week or things like that. So it's obviously challenging. We let them lead a lot of the meetings and the things that we do because honestly, they feel like each other understands and we don't. And so I think that that's where they get the most amount of motivation is they get it from each other. And so we do a lot of that, a lot of them helping each other through the storm. So I'll pass the baton.
Thank you for sharing. Shauna.
Yeah, I hear you on the be brief part. Challenge is real. So I think if I were just going to add on so that I don't repeat, one of the things that I think is really critical when you're in a crisis is not only to make sure that that you increase your interactions, right? Because everybody's dealing with what's going on in the business. Sellers sit in that counselor role with their clients. So, clients, have been on a journey that's been difficult, and the seller's been along with that. And then they've had their personal struggles. And so increasing, those touch points to make sure that we're holding to them. But I also think that the other side of that is that we have been very focused on providing structure, because when you're so much is going on, like, what are we going to focus on today? So, making our trainings have a element that's very actionable. So today we're going to train on, the increase in audience for our owned and operated, and we want to see this as an output from that. And so let's follow up on that so that we have something that's very actionable to do today, especially during the times when things were very, very overwhelming. And that also gave us a mile marker when we touched back in our daily stand-ups to be able to clap and celebrate. Because I think that that's really important, to be recognizing the milestones that we're taking as we get back on track. And then just making sure that that partnership is felt. So whether it's between sales and post-sales, or sales and news, or between the manager and the rep, that there's just deep commitment to success, and that success is not something that we create in isolation. It only happens when we're all in it together.
Amen. Agreed. Thank you. Bruce.
Yeah, most of my staff has been working remotely, and that's been a blessing and a curse. But the blessing is that it's easy to get everybody together. We use Microsoft Teams. So we've been doing weekly training sessions. I think Shauna mentioned we've been doing a lot of that. I mean, we'll bring in guests, and it's been very motivational. We're communicating a lot. With the sales managers morning and evening check-ins. Probably the biggest challenge the reps are having right now is prospecting. Now, this has been talked about on the call. Some customers don't want to see you, or it's more a challenge to get a hold of people, yada, yada, yada. So we do a lot of coaching and mentoring around that. And the other thing too, because I have a fair amount of staff that's been furloughed as well. We made the decision, and this was a big morale boost for all of the reps that were not furloughed. I made the decision that I was going to pay the commissions on the existing business to those reps that were furloughed, even though somebody else might be handling it. So I pay a flat covering fee for the handling rep, and then I'm continuing. I didn't know how that would go over. Like, I thought the covering rep might not be happy. Anyway, long story short, everybody thought it was the right thing to do, and they all love it. And I'll end with this. I don't condone this, but many of my sales teams are doing virtual happy hours.
I do condone virtual happy hours.
I condone it, yeah. I participate.
Yep, me too, big fan.
I'm a fan too. Sorry, Bruce. Omar.
Well, we did a lot of things to keep our folks motivated. We started with, first of all, revising the goals, right? To keep them motivated. We also looked at our commission structure. We had a floor on our commission plan, and we suspended that floor. So that way, even if they fall below the floor on their monthly revenue, they could still be able to get paid. But with half of our team working remotely, we gathered them every day via webinar, as well as in the individual offices, to have that recap. And our goal was to keep it lively, to keep it happy, to celebrate successes and recognize some of the bigger successes. We started it with music, sometimes we ended it with music, and everyone kind of participated and was really into it. We had theme days. We had our folks, whether it's favorite hat, favorite jersey, favorite whatever, and they would give some input as to how they wanted or what they wanted the theme to be the following week. And most importantly, we fed them. So we ordered out every Friday, and everyone in the office got to eat a nice lunch. So they were very happy about that. But during that time, like I said, no one was actually able to see their clients face to face. So we dedicated a lot of time to training. We we had some training with Ryan Dorn. We brought in and did some training with Mike Blinder from EMP. So we really had the team engaged into capitalizing not necessarily this downtime, but this inside time. So when we come out of it, they'll be a lot more robust in their selling skills. So overall, but at the end of the day, it was about keeping it fun, keeping it engaged. We were all in it together, and we're going to celebrate together and get through it together. So so far so good. Everyone's been really really engaged and performing really well, surprisingly well.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And last but certainly not least, Patrick.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I know we're at time here, but Bruce, what is all this talk about not condoning happy hours?
Well, I should have said I condone it. I don't. It's not officially a company function.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
If anyone of you guys knows me, it's what I started with. Look, in all seriousness, we did the happy hours too. I actually wrote a parody song about what it's like to work remotely during COVID-19 on my guitar, and I played it for my entire office. So that's a true story, but I'll spare you guys from having to hear it.
We want the video.
Another thing is, and I'm just sharing some fun stuff here, but another thing is, everybody shared a baby picture, and the rest of the department had to guess who it was. That was fun.
That's cool.
But let's get to the business, right? We provided leads. That was a big motivation factor. We actually had the management team get together and be the lead sourcers for a couple weeks. We provided nearly 1,000 leads as a management team to our reps. And a lot of those that came from things like our Pulse research platform that provides leads in different business categories. And one big one that was huge, provided a lot of leads. For those of you that do a best of Reader's Choice program, we took a look at our top 5 finalists in all of our business categories. And we said, hey, how do we partner? Everything we're trying to do is to help people advertise and tell their message at a reasonable rate. And I said, hey, let's go after these guys. These are the best businesses in the market, right? So let's help them tell their story. And I'll stop there, Jim.
No, all great ideas, gang. Loved all of them, and I'm sure everyone on this call feels the same way. We do have one question in the chat box, and I'd love to get this answered. Hey, Jerry, if you want to take yourself off mute and ask the team the question, I'm sure they'd love to hear it from you firsthand.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, our question was on ALFs in the healthcare category. What are you selling them? We have lots of ALFs, and they've all shut. They were spending a lot of money with us before the virus, but now we get nothing. What are you doing to sell? Anybody having luck?
I can speak a little bit to that, Jerry. So now we also have a senior living guide that publishes twice a year that's distributed throughout the market. So we've got a little bit something different to offer up, but I will say this, that we struggled to initially when these buildings are locked down, they cannot have visitors. I mean, this was just one of those, no matter what you did, we were having the regular conversations. They're like, there's no point in it.
Yeah.
My only point I can share right now is that's starting to change. There is a little bit of a sense that it's time to start marketing again. So I don't know the solution. I'm hopeful that things are getting a little better in terms of access to these facilities and so on.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback on some of that. So we have quite a few senior living facilities that are in our book of business, and we kept a number of them running, and we changed their message quite a bit. So we focused on messaging around how those facilities were keeping their residents safe. Because if you think about on the other side, they were going to want to attract residents. So how are they keeping those residents safe? But also how are they combating senior loneliness? So if you're not in an assisted living facility and you were just sheltering in place on your own and you were doing this for this period of time, one of the things that contributes to senior depression is loneliness. And so how were they balancing all of that? So we did a lot of that in branded content. And then we also deployed some real estate strategies in senior living around virtual tours. And we were moving traffic over to the virtual tours, so they couldn't, do campus tours, but they would send traffic to virtual tours.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, good
Of
idea.
course.
All right. Hey, special thank you again to all of our panelists and to our sponsors, Blue Toad, Preferred Marketing Solutions, and Intersect Media. Hope you found this session valuable, and always looking forward to hearing from our members. And please send any suggestions for our future VIP sessions our way. Have a great rest of the day, a strong Q2 finish, and be well, be safe, everybody.